Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a Diablo 3 video about the Necromancer. New information has come out. I was here live on the scene. There was the first Diablo summit today that I'm recording this. I'm going to try to get this video out as soon as possible. But we got to playtest the Necromancer and talk to the devs, got some more information, learned some new things, and I'm going to try to communicate to you as much as I have retained while it's still fresh in my mind. So today, Tuesday, March 28th, Blizzard hosted the Diablo Rise of the Necromancer Influencer Summit, held at the Fairmont Hotel, now known as the Duke Hotel. They flew in 17 influencers from across the globe. And by influencers, they're talking about YouTubers, streamers, bloggers, people on the news sites, all for this secret meeting about the Necromancer for a feedback session, a playtest feedback session, Q&A with the devs. In the first half of the day, they gave us some presentations and let us demo the latest build, the Melee Necromancer. And then the second half of the day was all about the focus group meetings with individual developers on different topics. So I'll start by talking a bit about my play experience with the Necro, and then we'll move into what we learned during the further discussions with the devs. Now, the first thing I want to address is some comments that were brought up. The last time we covered this latest Necromancer news during PAX, and that was, where are the skeletons? Where are the summons? This build was just showing off different skills from the BlizzCon build. Back at BlizzCon, when I first played test the Necromancer, that was the first Necro demo, that was the pet Necromancer. You had your skeletons, you had your bone spear, you had your corpse explosion. It was super fun. I loved it. Now, the PAX demo, which is also the demo that we got to try today, was the Melee Necromancer. Blood Nova. Blood Golem. I need to interject here and say that Travis Day, the developers, also said Golem sometimes, okay? The point of the Melee Necromancer setup was just to prove that it can be done. Now, my fantasy of playing the Necromancer is not a Melee Necromancer, it's a pet Necro for sure, but I still found this build fun. It had synergy, it felt fluid. So the 6 available skills were, and we're going to get the names wrong, but they're going to grossly describe what they do. Your primary attack, your left click was Grim Scythe. That's your generator, 180 degree arc, and it generates your essence. That's your resource. Right click was Blood Nova. That's a rune from Death Nova, and we're going to talk more about Death Nova and possible Poison Nova, folks, a little later. Then on number 1 hotkey, you had Devour, and the rune I think was Cannibalize, and this is a skill that sucks up all the corpses on screen to regenerate health and essence. That particular rune also enabled you to regen health. On your number 2 hotkey was the Blood Golem. That was a rune of Golem, so that means we're going to have 7 different Golem runes. And we learned actually that none of the other Diablo 2 Golems, I believe, are going to be in Diablo 3. Only the Blood Golem. So we're going to have 6 other unique Golems that we haven't seen before. Now, when you press the number 2 hotkey, that resummons the Golem at the target location and serves as a mini health potion. I believe it gives you back 25% of your health. So that's 2 skills right off the bat that will regain health, and you need that because the rune on Death Nova, Blood Nova, costs not just essence, the resource, but also health. Then on number 3 hotkey, you have Blood Rush, I believe it's called. It's your sort of teleport, your movement ability. It behaves very much like the Wizard Teleport or the Monk Dashing Strike, just without the charges. And the rune on that costs you life in order to have a shorter cooldown. So it's a pretty low cooldown skill, but it costs you a bit of health. And then lastly, on number 4 hotkey was, I believe it's called Decrepify? No, Leech. Leech is what it's called. It is a curse. You cast it at your target location, anywhere on screen, in an area. It affects all the enemies in the area, and you now gain life on hit for attacking those enemies. I believe you regain 1% of your health for every enemy hit. So this is what my playstyle was. This is what my skill rotation was. I found a skill rotation. I found it was really fluid, really smooth. I cleared the rift in a few minutes. It struggled with the Rift Guardian though, and we'll go over why exactly. Now I gotta say that the map was very advantageous. It was an ideal Rift, apart from having door throwers, those Goatman spearmen. It was the big open map with good density. Also good pylons. But regardless, my rotation would be that I start by casting Leech, I then rush of Essence into the big pack of enemy. I specifically hunt for the big packs, and then I Blood Nova, Blood Nova, Blood Nova, Blood Nova, until the pack is mostly dead. At this point, I've taken a little bit of health and damage, and I've used up a little bit of Essence. Then I pop number 1, that's Devour. That sucks up the corpses of the monsters I just killed. I regain my health, I regain my resource. By that point, my teleport is off cooldown, so I cast Leech again on the next group of enemies, and repeat. Teleport into them, Blood Nova, Blood Nova, Blood Nova, and if ever I'm out of resource, which is very rare, and I'm not using my number 1, I'll throw in a Grim Scythe, maybe here or there, not really necessary, and again, if health was ever a bit of an issue, which it never really was, I can pop Blood Golem as an additional potion if my potion is on cooldown. But for the most part, it was a very smooth rotation of skills. There's definitely room for optimization. There's possibly 1 to 2 skills that weren't really needed, and you could have worked in some better skills for to further optimize the build somehow. But Blizzard's purpose here wasn't to present a super optimum build. It was just to try out a few skills that some of them went, kind of well together. And again, it took a couple minutes to get through the trash and reach the Rift Guardian. And it was when we reached the Rift Guardian that we struggled a little bit, because this build is somewhat dependent on corpses and dealing AoE damage. So because I was focusing on killing groups of enemies, that synergizes really well with our kit. Blood Nova is an AoE, so it's going to hit all the enemies. Furthermore, that Leech skill only restores 1% life per enemy hit, so it works best when you cast it on a big group and you're constantly hitting that big group. You're regaining back all the life. It kind of makes up for the cost of Blood Nova. But against the Rift Guardian, there were very little adds, so I couldn't really use Death Nova all that much. I had to be a lot more cautious. I couldn't continuously attack. I had to back out sometimes. And I can definitely see this being an issue for Rift Guardians that don't spawn a lot of minions. Blizzard did say that if they do find that to be a serious issue, they might add more minions to some of the Rift Guardians that are lacking them. But what I really saw here was potential for another party build. Currently, right now, what is the designated DPS in the 4-man meta groups? It is the Firebat's Witch Doctor, the ultimate AoE killer, the ultimate killer of big groups of enemies, and then it's pretty bad against single target. It's pretty bad against the Rift Guardian, and that's why the optimum 4-man groups have the Firebat Witch Doctor to take care of, the first 99% of the Rift, and then they have the Generator Monk to deal that single target damage against the Rift Guardian. Or in 2.5, you're going to have, the Impaled Demon Hunter or the Hydra Wizard, just something to deal with that single target damage. So the possibility exists that the Necromancer could usurp the Witch Doctor in that role. It'll be hard to say, but Blizzard did also assure us that there will be more single target builds or skills rather for the Necromancer to allow for dealing with the Rift Guardian without having to depend on adds. And a big part of the adds as well is corpses. A lot of the Necromancer's skills, or not a lot, but some of the Necromancer's skills rely on the resource of corpses. You kill a monster, it leaves behind a corpse. Devour, for instance, is based off of chewing up the corpses on screen. If there are no corpses, you can't use Devour to regain your essence and your health. Corpse Explosion, which we've gone over in the past at the BlizzCon build, if there's no corpses to explode, then there's no corpses to explode. So overall, I was happy with the skills the build presented. I was hoping to maybe see some additional skills, but what we got to playtest was solid. And based on everything that they talked about and hinted at, I'm pretty confident that there's going to be a lot of different viable types of builds for the Necromancer, and I guess we'll get into that now. We'll get into what we learned during our talks with the devs during the feedback sessions. Now, first and foremost, to address the inevitable question, did they talk about the price or the release date? No and no. There's actually a lot more that goes into pricing than is immediately obvious, and that's the different regions. You gotta consider the price in America, the price in Europe, the different currencies, and additionally on console. So it's something that requires a lot more thought and consideration than is immediately apparent. So the purpose of presenting the melee necromancer was sort of as a diametric opposite to the BlizzCon build. BlizzCon was very long distance, let your pets do the work. The melee mancer is on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's close range, in your face. And while the blood golem was there, I honestly didn't really feel his presence all that much. He was basically just there to be an extra potion when I needed him, but I didn't really feel like he was doing any of the work himself. He might have been, if he was, it wasn't apparent to me. I felt like it was my Blood Nova doing everything. And the Blood Nova rune is the rune on Death Nova that actually deals the most damage, and that is because it is at the additional expense of costing you life. Something revealed during the talks is that at the BlizzCon build, we had the Command Skeletons skill, which allowed us to raise an army of skeletons, and some were melee and some were skeletal mages that shot from afar. What was revealed is that Command Skeletons now only raises melee fighters. That said, skeletal mages will still somehow be in the game, though Blizzard didn't exactly tell us in what way. We do know that they will not appear as a rune for Command Skeletons. My speculation, based on how some of the talks were going, is that it might be one or more passive skills that add the skeletal mages. For instance, the idea of the Witch Doctor passives that allow for additional zombie dogs came up. And so there might be that form of synergy, if you will, between the passives and the raise undead skills. But that's pretty speculative. Revive. We got to see Revive in action. They've got it working. And just like everything else about the D3 Necro, it is the D2 Necro dialed up to 11. The way Revive works is you basically cast it, I think it's in a specific area, and it'll target the corpses in that area. You don't just revive one corpse, you revive the group of corpses either on screen or within an area of the screen where you're clicking, and all those monsters come back to life. It's pretty short-lived, so you won't be able to stack hundreds of monsters. But you can very easily have a small army of revived enemies traveling along with you, and the amount of enemies, or rather the types of enemies that can be revived, is even greater than we were previously led to believe. For instance, they made Mallet Lords work. We can revive Mallet Lords, contrary to what they were saying during the Facebook Q&A back in, what was it, January? They made it work just by scaling down the Mallet Lords a little bit. They're not going to be comically small, but they're going to be small enough to fit. And really the only enemies that you're not going to be able to revive are bosses and other enemies that don't really make sense to revive. For instance, those big tree monsters that are just too slow. There's really no point in reviving those. And what were they going to do? They were going to make them walk faster in order to compensate, which would just look really silly. So it's no big loss to not be able to revive those. Now, another good thing to know about Revive is that the revived minions will have health and deal damage appropriate to the revived monster. So it's not like all the revived monsters have the exact same amount of health and deal the exact same amount of damage and just have cosmetic differences. They do reflect what monsters you revive them from. However, it's not going to be exactly the health and damage of those monsters. It's going to be scaled appropriate to be relevant and important to you. If you revive an elite or a champion monster, it's going to revive as the normal version of that monster. And yeah, overall, Revive looking really cool. Can't wait to try it out. Now, the introduction of corpses as a new resource proved a little bit of an issue, but they do seem to be working it out really well. First off, if you're not a necromancer, you will not see corpses. Second, if you're on PC, the corpses you see are your corpses only. If there's another necromancer in the party, he has his own corpses, so you don't have to have a shared pool of corpses, which is just great. On console, however, for the couch co-op experience, well, how do you do that? You can't. So what they did is, on console, corpses, if you're playing in a party, will have 2 charges. This allows you to use the corpses, and then your buddy to also use those same corpses, and then these corpses are depleted. That said, something that wasn't obvious to me at first is that the same person could use those corpses twice. And Blizzard's kind of okay with that because they figure, well, it's a couch co-op experience. If your buddy's being a dick, you can just, punch him on the shoulder, or you can work it out. And that presents an interesting choice that players will have to make, and that's corpse management. You're gonna have different corpse skills, remember. And it's not just about what corpse skills to use, because you could potentially have multiple corpse skills equipped. It's also when to use them. For instance, Devour will consume all corpses on screen, so you might want to have to strategically think about your uses of Devour. If you're missing, let's say half your health, do you use that Devour now, consume all the corpses, and then have no corpses for the rest of the fight, beyond what other corpses you might be able to generate? If you're just too spam happy, then you could make a suboptimal decision. And I think this is really good because I think giving a player more choices and more meaningful choices creates more interesting and engaging gameplay. Corpses, additionally, will only stack up to about 10. So what this means is you can't just leave corpses behind and come back for them later. You'll only ever have about 10 or about a dozen corpses at any point, and it's the most recent corpses that remain. So let's say you're at your max number of corpses on screen, as you move forward and generate new corpses, then the oldest corpses will fade first. This is to basically have a constant moving supply of corpses come along with you. And it prevents sort of cheesy or not very fun mechanics whereby you store a lot of corpses in one area and then you kite the Rift Guardian all the way back through the rift. It's cumbersome. I'm glad that they are using the system that they're using now. So the 2 main reasons that the Melee Mancer really suffered against the Rift Guardian was, 1, hardly any corpses. So no corpses means no Devour in order to regain your essence and your health, and it also means that your leech rune, your leech skill rather, is hardly effective at all. What is gaining 1% health on every attack when you're just ever attacking one enemy at a time? So that particular build really wasn't suited for fighting a Rift Guardian. However, I will say that the most awesome part about the Rift Guardian fight was being able to explore. Once again, we explored it once at BlizzCon, but I got a closer look and I got a really great appreciation of the art of the Temple of the Firstborn. That's one of the new areas that we're going to get to explore. It's possibly the grimmest, darkest, grittiest area to be added to Diablo yet, and I love it. Diablo 3, of course. So, it does seem that any Necromancer build that relies on corpses is gonna suffer against Rift Guardians. So I do have a concern there that solo Necromancer builds will have to be optimized to not use the corpse skills, which I think will be a bit of a shame. So we'll have to see what happens. We'll have to better test it fully when the Necromancer hits the public test realm. Because generally, optimum builds are builds that kind of specialize in something. It's pretty rare to have a build that, okay, I've got this set of skills to deal with most of the monsters, and then I have these skills just for the Rift Guardian. You generally don't see that. You're generally going to be using all your skills as often as possible. So again, we'll have to wait for the playtest to find out. That said, again, Blizzard does expect both solo target builds and multi-target builds to be viable. The Blood Golem didn't seem to be doing much tanking for me. Apparently part of the purpose of the Golem is to sort of go and tank the hits. And I suppose if you're not running a melee Golem, if you're going to be throwing bone spears, then it probably does successfully run interference, and Blizzard also suggested that other runes on Golem might be better suited for tanking, for drawing attacks. Again, the Blood Golem's shtick is that he's another healing potion for you. Someone asked if there would be some rune for Blood Rush that would completely remove the cooldown. The issue here was that obviously we have the Ingum that's used a lot to for speed farming builds, right? To reduce the cooldown to basically 0 on our dash, on our teleport, and this and that. Blizzard said it's highly unlikely that there will be a rune that will do that. If anything, it will be a legendary item that would do something like that. Another little tidbit that we noticed was that there is no passive essence generation for the Necromancer. So the only way to gain essence is to generate it. The current status of the Necromancer is that they're basically finalizing the skills. They just started doing like the final runes and passives is my understanding. And next is when they're going to take a bigger look at sets. They've started to talk about sets. They've started to think about sets rather, but really nothing set-wise has been developed yet. And to me, a big part of determining whether the Necromancer will be balanced is how the sets will play. The current state of Diablo is that itemization is what balances the classes. This seems to have been a design decision taken a couple of years ago, perhaps, sometime after Reaper of Souls, perhaps, where they kind of stopped balancing skills and started balancing skills just by adding in items that buffed skills and sets that buffed skills. So it's really impossible to give you any idea of whether I think such and such is balanced or underpowered or overpowered until we really see what the sets are going to do, what 2000% bonus is going to go to what skills or set of skills. That said, there will be 4 Necromancer sets, and the sets that they had in mind was having one set that will be a pet-based set. I think they said that that'll also be the bone-based set. Another set that will be a melee set, another set that will be a ranged set, and then a set that will be very focused on the blood skills. And they described that as a sort of Bram Stoker's Dracula blood bone looking set. And I really tried to convince them to add a Trangul set, or rather just to name one of those sets, the Trangul set. I've always found that was a very iconic Necromancer set from Diablo 2. Trangul's avatar, you equip it, it transforms you into a vampire. So it seems they might possibly name the blood set Trangul's. It's already got that blood sort of vampire theme, so they specified that curses won't be specific to any given set. They might just be modified by legendary items. This basically tells us that curses can then be mixed into any build, doesn't matter what set. There won't be the, oh, this is the set to use if you want to use curses. A really interesting thing about the design focus of the Necromancer is that the Necromancer will actually have fewer skills than other classes. They wanted to focus more on playstyles, and I think they expressed that they have more playstyles while having fewer skills. So basically, instead of having, say, 7 different skills in a category and 5 of them are useless, Blizzard wanted to focus instead on creating useful skills, things that'll actually get used. And then what they're doing is, within the runes in the range skill, that's what's going to sort of create your variety in how the attack is. So like, multi-shot is just, it's pretty straightforward. It's always that big spray of attacks, and Cluster Arrow was kind of always that same kind of thing, or very similar. What they're doing with Bone Spear, for instance, is having the runes create the different kind of payload. So for instance, one rune on Bone Spear might be to create a cone of damage, like multi-shot, and another might be a piercing straight line, and another might be like a fireball sort of, not actually being a fireball, but have that same area of effect, like you throw it and it does damage in an area like a fireball would. Blizzard didn't say what other range skills there will be, but there will be more than just Bone Spear. They were really trying to focus on not having any dead or useless skills and avoiding any kind of overlap as well between skills. Blizzard revealed the 3 elements that the Necromancer is currently using, and it seems this is what's going to ship. It's physical, cold, and poison, guys. So for those few of you, I feel, that were pretty upset that the Necromancer was losing poison, he's not losing poison, it's just being themed differently. It is being themed as blight, and it's more like a necrosis, it's more like, they didn't get deep into it, but just the term blight. So it's not going to be like the Witch Doctor's poison, but there will be a Death Nova rune that will be poison damage. It will be Blight. It's not named Blight Nova, but basically, folks, the Necromancer is getting some form of poison Nova. And that, I think, should satisfy the only real concerns or criticisms that I saw of the D3 Necromancer. And in deciding what elements, Blizzard didn't set out to pick a number of elements. So the Necromancer obviously has fewer elemental damage types than any other class, but Blizzard wasn't trying to meet a quota. We also know from this that because there's no fire damage, so we're not going to see a fire golem like in Diablo 2. And as we said, it was confirmed that there's actually no other returning golems other than the blood golem. There will be a bone golem, that was confirmed. I believe a blight golem was confirmed. It's not quite a blight golem, but it's a golem that will deal blight damage, similar with a cold golem. And the reason that cold and poison were picked was just that thematically, they needed more damage types to describe the kind of damage being done beyond just physical. And so I'm guessing that the more like spooky spirit damage, sucking your soul away, is going to be cold, and again, blight is going to be that sort of like necrosis, dark, evil energy kind of damage, sapping your life away probably. I asked if golems would be ubiquitous in the sense that it's like kind of expected that the Necromancer always has some golem active, and they said not at all. There's no skill really that they expect every Necromancer player to use. A really nice line that Travis Day said was something along the lines of, "We just try to make really cool stuff and then you guys break it." Like, in other words, when they're designing the skills, they're just trying to come up with like good ideas, cool ideas, things that they think will be fun and useful, and they don't concern themselves too much with how the builds may come together because they know that we're always going to surprise them. It's impossible for them to predict what will become a meta build. There's going to be some interaction that they didn't come up with that some pro gamer in Asia is going to top the leaderboards with. It was confirmed again, it was spoken of in the Q&A, but it was basically confirmed that the Necromancer will not have a ultimate transformation power like Archon or Vengeance like the Demon Hunter. I'm really glad about that. The problem with Wizards is Archon. It's too strong, you can't pass it up. The problem, it's not a huge problem, but it's not interesting that Demon Hunters can maintain 100% uptime on Vengeance, and that's so good that basically all Demon Hunter builds use that now. If something is so good that you would be stupid to not use it, then it is overpowered, and that is not interesting. It's not an interesting choice to make if that choice is, do I want to be really strong, or do I want to get myself for the purpose of being more interesting? Something that I was really happy, I guess, that Travis acknowledges that he's not really happy or content with the state of builds in Diablo 3, because it very much parallels my feelings, that he didn't explicitly vocalize it, but basically builds revolve around sets right now, and sets revolve around buffing certain skills, and this forces certain playstyles. Travis would really want playstyles to be opened up more, but this isn't something that could really be changed with the game at this point. Like, this is the direction that D3 has taken, and short of a massive overhaul that would possibly make some people happy, but probably upset other people. But anyway, again, he really cares about the diversity, and he wants players to have more of that diversity. So what he's going to try to focus on with the sets is that they are going to allow for as much diversity as possible. That they're not going to like, this set buffs these two skills, therefore you have no fucking choice. He spoke about maybe stuff like it'll buff all blood skills, or things that are a lot more open-ended. Like, obviously there's going to be one that buffs all the pet skills, and there's no real way around that. But apart from that, he wants it to allow for a lot more diversity amongst what the players can select as skills without being shoehorned into picking a specific set of skills because you're using that set. I'm really happy about that direction. I'm glad that there was this awareness. And it makes me feel confident in the sets that will be developed for the Necromancer. I'm just going to throw this in here just in the odd chance that this becomes a reality, but someone in our focus group suggested that there be some... So basically, he lamented that for the Witch Doctor, there is nothing that ever alters the way your pets look with respect to like an ultimate power or a set or whatever. So he suggested that either an item or a set might alter the appearance of your pets. And the challenges with that is that it's a lot of work to create different appearances for pets. So something that I just kind of suggested as a possible solution is, okay, well, you've already got the little floating skulls for cosmetic pets. What if the alternate appearance is just changing your skeletons into those floating heads and they can shoot, you know, ice balls or whatever skeletal mages shoot? So if you see that idea in the game, that might be my fault, guys. I'm sorry. It was also emphasized that the cold and poison, or blight, are very much secondary themes. So, again, at first we thought there would be no poison skills at all because they stressed that poison would not be a big theme, or wouldn't be a theme at all, I think they were saying at first, for the Necromancer, but it's been brought in as very much a secondary theme. And again, the main theme is still the blood and the bone, but again, to sort of like fill in little gaps here and there, we've got the cold, we've got the blight, and they're going to be done in a way to not at all feel similar to the witch doctor or to whatever else might use cold. And it was stressed, though, that there will be no poison dots, no damage over time, poison lowering your health kind of effects for the Necro. One really cool thing that was said was Frost, for example. You could actually have an entire Frost-based army. The term White Walkers from Game of Thrones was used, so like, I guess that means there will be a Frost golem, and whatever skeletal minions that you can summon, you'll be able to room them all to be cold damage. And so I think that's really cool. Like, I think that's a really cool way of bringing in undead. Like, I never thought of it, but that's an excellent mix of cold and undead, like the White Walkers from Game of Thrones. It's a no-brainer, but like, it's something that's become iconic now thanks to Game of Thrones, and I think it's awesome to give the Necromancer the ability to summon that. I asked Julian Love if bone armor will be coming back into the game, and his answer was basically they couldn't reveal any additional skills, but he said that we'll be pleasantly surprised, or that we'll be pleased by what other skills are brought back from Diablo 2. A big question that they answered, why not an expansion? Well, it was only about a year ago that they decided to do the Necromancer. They've been talking about it since the beginning, but the decision, it's only been about a year. And at that point, so it was 2016, right? Diablo 2 released in 2012. So the game was 4 years old. Reaper of Souls released in 2014. The latest expansion came out 2 years ago. If in 2016 they were going to start work on an expansion, consider how many more years it would be before they could release it. Would anyone even be playing Diablo anymore at that point? So the Necromancer instead was something that they felt that they could reveal and release within a year's time, and it's still a monumental amount of work. I feel like people really have a poor impression of how much work it's going to take, because they could have half-assed it. They could have just said, okay, here's a Necromancer, but they're re-recording all the voice. They're integrating the Necromancer into the single-player campaign. They're redoing all the cinematics. They're gonna make it such that if someone picks up Diablo for the first time and plays a Necromancer, it'll be indistinguishable. You won't be able to tell that the Necromancer was added later in. So all the voiceover work, all the interactions between the various characters, right? You meet NPCs that react to you differently based on your class. Your companions will say different things. So basically, it's not that the Diablo 3 team was opposed to making an expansion, they just wanted to be able to give us something sooner rather than later. I'll also just throw in here, we're about done, that I suggested Bonewall. Bonewall was brought up, and part of the issue with Bonewall is blocking your own teammates, so I proposed maybe just allowing teammates to walk through it, and then that presents some other problems, like, I guess, lore-related problems of how are you walking through a bone wall, and I'm sure there's some ways around that, but I guess the reason I proposed Bonewall was I'm thinking Heroes of the Storm. You've got Tassadar that could cast his wall. You've got in StarCraft the sentries that could effectively cast walls. You've got Mei in Overwatch who can cast a wall. And these are all game-changing effects that have big impact, that they control an area in a very unique and meaningful and impactful way, and allows for strategic use that could really, like, completely change a battle. This was an off-the-cuff suggestion though, and upon deeper reflection, combat in D3 may happen too quickly for bone walls to really be relevant. I mean, I could imagine it being maybe useful against Rift Guardians to provide a buffer between you and the Rift Guardian if he's melee and trying to charge at you or even trying to shoot things at you. But if the only real use of Bone Wall is versus a Rift Guardian, then I wouldn't advocate introducing that. I'd want a seal to be useful throughout the entirety of a Rift. And I don't know, if you're moving so quickly, I don't know. I have mixed thoughts. I just tossed it in there. They'll figure it out. Odds are we probably won't see Bone Wall. So overall, very positive impression of the Necromancer, very positive impression of the team working on the Necromancer. There's so much passion there. There's so much... I feel like they're doing everything in the right direction with the Necromancer. And part of the reason you might feel that there's not a lot else happening in D3 is because most of their efforts are being spent on delivering the Necromancer right now. So I'm super looking forward to fully playtesting it on the PTR. And we're just going to finish off this video by unboxing the swag bag that we got. So it's going to be right over here. This little doozy. So I think that was that 3 was jotted on manually, but still very nice. Little nice thematic emblem. And take out the packaging. There were different colors. There were some that were black with red stuffing instead. So looking in here quickly. Oh, this is looking cool. So number 1. Let's see the lighting here. This is a hardcore blank sketchbook. Very nice. This is gorgeous. I don't even know if I'll be able to touch the pages inside. It's too beautiful. It is embossed and everything, just gorgeous. Okay, I think we'll start with the unmarked, nondescript white cube. I have a feeling that this is a mug. Let's find out. It, in fact, is a mug. Oh, good bubble wrap. I don't have to worry about it breaking on the way back to Canada. And, oh, I think they were selling these in the Blizzard shop back at BlizzCon. Oh, that's cool. Is there stuff inside? Wait a minute. What? Hold on. If you hold this up to the... Oh my god, is this semi-translucent? What is this? I'm trying to hold this up. I'm trying to show you guys what I'm seeing. There's like... What? Does this change color? Like, what? I don't even know. I don't know, guys. There's something going on with this cup. I see designs on the inside that... Given the lighting here, I can't quite give you the proper angle, I feel. But I wonder if it's something that lights up, like if you have hot water in it or something? Pouring in some hot water, maybe? I don't know. And I just ruined the mug. The design melts off. It's a disaster. Yeah, nothing's really happening. I mean, the water's not super hot, I gotta say. But, yeah, I don't know. Nonetheless, tray cool. No, it seems like something's appearing. Was that always there? Was that Diablo logo always there? I feel like it wasn't. No, it seems like it's appearing now. Maybe? I don't know. Yes, all the design's appearing, guys. Look. Yeah. Oh, that's sick. Let's go shut off the sink. All right, look at that. Oh, that is cool, guys. That is, man, I want that artwork. I want that artwork. Got the Diablo 3 emblazoned on it. It's, yeah, very nice. Very cool, very cool. Okay, and that leaves us with the final object, which is quite interesting looking. Bottomless potion of regeneration, it says. Okay. I am interested. Color me intrigued. Or, in German, Wasserflasche. I don't know. So we're going to open this. I'm concerned a little bit about opening this with one hand. Here we are. Okay, more bubble wrap. I'm glad, again, traveling back to Canuckville, Canada. A little concerned about things being broke. Oh, wow. Yeah, this is from Blizz. They were selling these at Blizz. Oh, that's genuine glass. God, I hope this doesn't break on the voyage. Wow. Okay. Look at that. That is glass. That is not the sound of plastic. It's got a very cool, like rune design, arcane symbols, and it's like a I guess it's a water bottle, portable water bottle, as opposed to the non-portable kind of water bottle. All right, and that is gonna wrap up this video. So, thanks for watching, folks. Leave a comment with your thoughts. What do you think about what we know of the Necromancer so far? Are you hyped for it? I am. I can't wait for the PTR. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch and Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.